So I get questions from time to time about setup of my rig, and I thought I would go through everything and describe how this is set up. It's set up in kind of an unusual way. I bi-amp all the speakers, so it was somewhat difficult to set this system up, but I think it works the best and sounds the best in this particular setup. So I will start at the beginning, and we'll go down here, which is the power input. I use a Panamax power conditioner. Does a great job of controlling the older style amps. I'm able to remotely turn that on, given the fact that that's a mid-70s 2105, which obviously doesn't have a remote control. So the power is run through the power conditioner with a trigger from the preamp that allows me to turn that on. Next to that, I have a PS Audio DAC that works really well. And then I have the whole system is run through a Harmony remote hub system, which I'll get to in a second. It works well, but it has its own issues. Next, I have a MHT 100, which is used as both a preamp and amp. This is an 8-channel amp, and I use this specifically for the subwoofer outputs power. I use this as a active crossover for the subs or the woofers on each one of the speakers. I'll get to that in just a second. And then I have a 275 tube amp that runs 2 of my speakers, and it runs the highs and the mids on the LaScalas. The 2105 on the bottom runs the highs and the mids on the K-horns in the other room. The MHT 100 runs the woofers in all of the speakers, the LaScalas and the K-horns. Then I have a server, which is basically just a PC that I built. I bought a case, installed a PC in it, and then made the front panel and put lights behind it, and I think it turned out pretty well. Looks good. Just a typical Audio-Technica turntable, nothing fancy. I don't listen to that much vinyl. And then I have a C2200, which is my preamp. That's a tube preamp. It works quite well. Before that, I used just the MHT 100 as the preamp and amp. The 2200 sounds better, but I wouldn't say it's drastically different. And then to run all the software, I use JRiver, which is hooked up to the PC and runs all of the music. Almost all of it is through FLAC format. It works really well. And what's nice about that software is that it has a remote with the iPad or your phone anywhere in the house. You're able to access all the music and play it whenever you need remotely. Then we go to the speakers. The LaScalas are circa 1982, 1983 time frame. Picked these up used. These just sound amazing. I love these speakers. As I said, they're bi-amped, so the tops, the horns, and the tweeters run off of the 2-channel amps, and then the woofers are driven by the MHT 100. So what happens is the signal comes out of the MHT, or I'm sorry, the C2200 goes directly into the MHT 100 input for the subwoofer input on the MHT 100. That signal is split off and powers 4 separate channels that go to the woofers on each one of the speakers. So there's 2 out here, so the LaScalas, and then there's 2 in the other room, which are the K-horns. So the tops are driven by the 2105 solid state amp, and then the bottom is driven by the sub output on the MHT 100s. So it allows me to control how much bass I want for both speakers. The other question I get a lot is, you know, the setup is wrong for your K-horns. They're not in a corner and therefore don't work well. And I've tried to email this or put this in the comments, but some people don't read it. These cabinets, I built these cabinets that are basically like shelves that go on both sides, and the K-horn just sits on top of it, and this mimics a wall, and therefore I get great bass response, and they don't have to sit in the corner. And I've done that on both speakers. You can see back here, there's basically a wooden shelf that's made out of the same material as the speaker. It's birch plywood, 3/4 inch birch plywood, and it looks and sounds great. And theoretically, I could put them anywhere in the room. So I think that's about it. Hope you enjoy it. So one of the things I forgot to mention was about the remote system, which is the Harmony Hub. Originally, I used the Harmony Hub with the MHT100. I'd turn the power on. I could control everything remotely throughout the house. It worked great. Recently, I just added the C2200 preamp, and I used that as the preamp, and the MHT100 as just the driving the subs or the woofers on each one of the speakers. The problem is the remote control. The C2200 uses a particular signal for the remote, which is the exact same signal for the MHT100. So if I turn up the volume on the 2200, it wants to turn up the volume on the MHT100, which I don't want. I just want it dialed into a particular setting, and the volume control to be operated through the 2200. So I've had to do something a little unusual because I can't use the Harmony remote in that way. So what I did was I set up little remote extenders, which basically allow the Harmony to turn everything on remotely. But if you'd see here, I taped over it. So I use a different remote. I use a sofa baton remote to control the volume when I'm sitting in the chair. And what happens is the volume will go up and down on one side, but it won't go up and down on the MHT100 because I'm using a different signal. So I have to turn it on with the Harmony Hub, and then the volume control is actually used with the sofa baton, which is kind of a pain. But otherwise, the difficulty is that when you turn the volume up on this, it turns the volume up and down on this, and unfortunately it's not a linear volume one-to-one on both the 2200 and the 100, so I can't use that. So that's the only problem I've really had with this setup, is that I've got to use two different remotes, which is not ideal, but it does work. So anyone has any suggestions on how to get around that, please let me know. I have tried to set this up with the alternate video or remote signal, but unfortunately I can't find a remote that will actually control this, because if anyone knows, there's a alternate setting for the remote and a normal setting, and I can't find a remote that will actually drive the alternate signal. So if anyone has a suggestion about that, please let me know. All right, thanks.